Jackson to and there you see across the tarmac Air Force One, which touched down just a short time ago, making its way to not the normal terminal where you and I go, but a space off to the, I believe, the east side of the airport, where Air Force One usually parks and stays until the president is done with his pair of events here in Atlanta. He's going to not only speak at the NRA convention, but then he has a fundraiser following that to support the Republican congressional candidate Karen Handel, who's running to fill Tom Price's seat for the 6th Congressional District. There is a private fundraiser being held to raise money for her campaign. So after the president's speech today, he will then motorcade to an event which is closed to the media and a fundraising event to express his support for Karen Handel and to encourage local Republican luminaries and leaders and fundraisers here to get fully behind her campaign. We know in the run-up to the primary, to the first go-round here, if you will, Jon Ossoff garnered nearly enough votes to avoid a runoff, but that wasn't the case. He fell a percentage and a half or so short of where he needed to be to avoid a runoff, around 48.5%. And Karen Handel came out on top of the Republican contenders. So it is those two candidates who will face a runoff election. And if you've been watching any TV at all, you know Jon Ossoff's campaign has plenty of cash on hand. He's done lots of advertising, not only from the Democratic National Committee, but we've heard that celebrities are also involved in backing his campaign, and he's raised quite a bit of money from local supporters here too. So it is necessary for the administration and the Republican National Committee to get behind this campaign, and so the president will show that kind of support this afternoon in the first of what will be perhaps more appearances made by the president in support of Karen Handel. So, but the primary goal of this trip is to address supporters of the NRA, something that hasn't been done by a Republican president since the early 1980s, when President Ronald Reagan in Arizona addressed the NRA to a very enthusiastic and supportive crowd of folks in Arizona. I'm very happy with the presence of any time of a supportive president. And in that case, back in the early 1980s, it was President Ronald Reagan. And not since then has a Republican president addressed this conference. So a lot of other political luminaries on the roster of speakers this afternoon. The headliner, of course, is President Trump, who was very expressive and supportive of folks' Second Amendment rights during the campaign, as were all the other Republican contenders. But after he finally won the primaries and became the general election candidate, the NRA came out very supportive of presidential candidate Donald Trump. And so you could say that this is a bit of returning the favor, if you will. President Trump holds very close his core base of supporters, and among them are members of the NRA and fervent supporters of the Second Amendment. Many of those folks saw his nomination of Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch as an affirmation of that support of the Second Amendment. So there is Air Force One getting closer to us after having touched down about 7 to 10 minutes ago. Not a long flight from Washington, D.C., only about an hour and some change to make the trip. And so he'll speak, he's set to speak at around 1:45 or closer to 2 o'clock this afternoon. Now, where you and I would make a trip from Washington to come down to Atlanta and then get over to the Georgia World Congress Center might take 4 to 5 hours, soup to nuts. The president just departed Washington, Andrews Air Force Base, or Joint Andrews Reserve Base a couple of, not even 2 hours ago. He's already on the ground. He'll make his way over to the Georgia World Congress Center probably within 20 to 30 minutes, make his speech right away, and then be off to the private fundraising event. Joint Base Andrews, pardon me, is where he departed from in the Washington, D.C. area. So it's a very compressed trip, as presidential travel usually is. I want to bring in my colleague Sloan Glass, who's been watching the events unfold on all day. And Sloan, so not only do we have the events surrounding the NRA speech and the president arriving here, but some folks scattered about downtown in Woodruff Park and supporters of the president in Centennial Olympic Park gathering today to express their First Amendment rights.
Right, so while we have Donald Trump arriving now in Atlanta and his supporters there to greet him just across town, we also have people expressing their First Amendment rights and their outrage to see President Trump arriving in Atlanta. So we both have supporters while he's arriving and protesters just minutes away.
Yeah, that taking place in Woodruff Park. A few dozen folks staging what has been referred to as a die-in, and that means where they express themselves by laying on the ground. And so earlier in the afternoon at Woodruff Park, we saw probably what amounted to 3 or 4 dozen folks. And then not too far away over in Centennial Olympic Park, Trump supporters and folks who opposed him or who are pro-gun control. There's Governor. Can we take up the shot of Governor Nathan Deal and the First Lady of Georgia there, moving to the end of the staircase there. It should be noted here that Governor Nathan Deal has an important piece of legislation on his desk right now surrounding the campus carry legislation. That is something that has been tried here in Georgia once before and has failed. The governor vetoing that legislation the first time it came onto his desk, and so the legislature came together and comported another bill concerning campus carry. And so all of this, the president's speech to the NRA and our own piece of local legislation here in the state of Georgia surrounding campus carry is all being sort of framed around this event. And so there is the governor awaiting the president. Interesting to say that when President Obama visited our state, the mayor, who's a political ally of former President Obama's, would be there on the tarmac to greet him. Not so here. We have Governor Deal waiting for the president as we want to switch back to Air Force One now. See the door opening there, and the staircase will pull up to the plane there. You can see momentarily to await President Trump and his arrival here in Atlanta. Interesting side notes here and some inside baseball stuff for folks who are interested. On the plane with the president today was the White House Communications Secretary Sean Spicer and Steve Bannon, the advisor to the president. Jason Miller, who interestingly enough was once considered for a communications post, but declined it also on the plane with President Trump, making his way down here to Atlanta. Governor Rick Scott of Florida will also be speaking to the NRA crowd at the Georgia World Congress Center today, and Senator Ted Cruz, staunch advocate of gun ownership rights and the Second Amendment, will also take the stage. Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zink, who's also on Air Force One with the president, flew down here with him, will be among those addressing the crowd. So let's go back to the shot of Governor Deal, if we could, Sloan, who's approaching the foot of the staircase there. Just left that area and has moved out of camera frame. So we'll stick on the door here waiting for President Trump to disembark Air Force One. And there's a great shot, guys, of the presidential limousine and Governor Nathan Deal and his wife, and I can't make out who's right behind him, making their way to the foot of the staircase to welcome President Trump to the state of Georgia. It'll be interesting to see whether Deal gets in the limousine with him. Sometimes folks ride in the presidential limo on the way to whatever event the president is going to. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But here's President Trump disembarking Air Force One on his first presidential visit to Atlanta to address the NRA over at the Georgia World Congress Center. And several dozen supporters there greeting the president on the tarmac. Chosen a few dozen folks. The president now about to shake hands with Governor Nathan Deal, who welcomes him to our state. And the congressional candidate for the 6th District for Tom Price's seat, Karen Handel, we also understand, is right there next to the governor, also greeting President Trump. She's going to need his support here in the coming weeks as this runoff race heats up, and he's lending a little bit of that support this afternoon in the form of a fundraiser, a private fundraiser, which will take place after he addresses the NRA and folks over at the World Congress Center. He'll motorcade over to a private location and address fundraising folks and supporters of Karen Handel as she goes up against a very well funded candidate in Jon Ossoff, and a robust Democratic challenger for the 6th congressional seat who almost came real close to winning it. So let's punch over to the supporters there on the tarmac who are all there gathered, wondering if President Trump will come over and glad hand and shake some hands and say thank you to the folks that came out to welcome him to Atlanta and to the state of Georgia, and see him get out deplane Air Force One. And can you imagine, no matter who it is, and no matter which party it is, watching a president walk off of Air Force One? I mean, you're sort of witnessing a little bit of history there. You know, watching the leader of the free world step foot into your state and to walk off that magnificent plane. What a thrill for folks who were able to do that. So looks like the president got right into his limousine and is going to start the journey from Hartsfield-Jackson over to the Georgia World Congress Center, a trip that, when you're talking about a presidential motorcade, should only take about 15 minutes, 20 minutes maximum, with the rolling roadblocks that they're going to put in place along the I-85 and then what will eventually become the downtown connector. All of these movements and motions well thought out before the president ever gets anywhere near here, between coordination with the Secret Service and the Georgia State Patrol, who plan every foot of his movement through our state. And so this route was carefully pre-planned. The presidential motorcade arrives on another separate giant plane. It follows the president wherever he goes, probably a couple of dozen cars in length, and sort of a treat for Atlanta police officers and Georgia State Patrol officers to get to escort the president's motorcade on its way to the Georgia World Congress Center, which again should only take. And there's the. Have you ever been near any kind of motorcade? They're really loud. I mean, and that's because of the motorbikes that are in front and back of it. I mean, those things are loud in themselves, and there has to be a couple of dozen of them which accompany the motorcade. So it's an impressive sight to see, whether you're standing there watching the president disembark the plane or you happen to be alongside the route of a presidential motorcade. It's loud and impressive, as is no doubt President Trump's motorcade here. So as he pulls away from Hartsfield-Jackson International, I want to take the Georgia World Congress Center now, where folks are eagerly awaiting the president, which again, they haven't heard from Ronald Reagan, since 1983, when that group assembled in Arizona. So Let's take a picture of the World Congress Center. Before we do that, we're looking at Governor Nathan Deal and his wife Sandra and Karen Handel, the congressional candidate for the 6th District, and the person accompanying her, Governor Nathan Deal, seemingly riding in another vehicle, not getting the ride in the presidential limo. Maybe Handel rode in the limousine with President Trump over to the Georgia World Congress Center, because I don't see any sign of her anymore. So how's that for a tip of the hat from the President of the United States, getting to ride in the limo over to the event? Just a sea of supporters for not only President Trump, but Karen Handel there at the World Congress Center. The NRA, typically a heavily Republican group of folks. So let's take that shot. We're going to transport you into the Georgia World Congress Center now, where speeches are already underway. And if you guys can make out who's at the rostrum right now, the monitor's a little bit far away from me, but the speakers are already at the podium and will welcome the president. So let's drop in and listen in real quick to see what the folks there at the Georgia World Congress Center are saying.
For our country. After 8 years of leading from behind, ISIS was on the rise, the threat from terrorism had never been greater, and our enemies no longer even pretended to take us seriously. At home, illegal immigration was out of control. Sanctuary cities were allowing illegal criminal aliens unfettered access to destroying families and communities. A coldly calculated failure to enforce the law left the very concept of justice on the brink of collapse. Cities like Chicago became safe havens for killers, where nearly 4,000 people were murdered while Obama was president. And law enforcement everywhere, heroes who wake up every day willing to risk their lives for our safety, were left vulnerable by a deliberate, despicable lack of support from their so-called leaders. And the men and women who sacrificed the most for our freedom, our veterans, were treated with a carelessness and contempt that should forever stain the legacy of Barack Obama. The corruption, dishonesty, and elitism in Washington had truly reached a tipping point. Those were the stakes in last year's election. Not hyperbole, not fake news, the truth. But you know what else is true? The men and women of the National Rifle Association haven't backed down from a fight in 146 years, and we sure as hell weren't scared of Hillary Clinton. So we made sure every American understood the catastrophic consequences of Hillary in the White House. Please take a look.
She'll call 911. Average response time, 11 minutes. Too late. She keeps a firearm in this safe for protection. But Hillary Clinton could take away her right to self-defense. And with Supreme Court justices, Hillary can. Don't let Hillary leave you protected with nothing but a phone. The NRA Political Victory Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That's the America we could be living in right now. An America where even the most basic fundamental freedoms are destroyed. But you let that happen. And now, thanks to you, a true defender of constitutional principles, Justice Neil Gorsuch sits on the U.S. Supreme Court. His appointment alone is a monumental victory for American freedom. But you accomplished even more than that. How about Vice President Mike Pence? He's committed to faith, family, and the God-given principles that make this country great. And thanks to you, he's fighting for us every day. Thanks to you, Jeff Sessions runs the Justice Department. Now, it's going to take a hazmat suit to clean up the poisoned, politicized disgrace of a legacy left by Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. But if anyone has the passion and the integrity to restore the rule of law, it's Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Thanks to you, thanks to you, our enemies truly fear us once again because General James Mad Dog Mattis runs the Department of Defense. And the list goes on. Across the Trump administration, we have an all-star team of principled leaders. You should be proud because this organization made the difference and saved the soul of America. But the fight is far from over. All you have to do is turn on the TV to understand that we didn't win with this election. We still don't control Hollywood. And Michael Bloomberg, well, he's still short, rich, and angry. And they're such hypocrites. They love their armed security, but they just hate the idea of you being able to defend yourself with a firearm. And the truth is, in too many places today, you can't. Folks, it's a sorry state of affairs when 10 states can deny constitutional freedom to law-abiding American citizens. It's even worse when the media refuses to cover it. They won't report that honest, well-meaning people, nurses, stay-at-home moms, veterans, even a disaster relief worker, have been charged with felonies for simply having a lawfully owned firearm. Each was legally licensed to carry a gun in their home state, but arrested and charged as criminals when safely carried to another, less free state. It's an absolute outrage, and it goes unreported day after day. Look, this freedom makes a life or death difference in innocent people's lives. It isn't just illegal for states to deny it. It's downright immoral, and it needs to change. But for that to happen, it'll take the same intensity and moral purpose that we brought to last year's election. I don't care how long it takes, but we can and we will make Congress pass national right to carry reciprocity. We fight for self-defense because your life is worth fighting for. This is who we are. Please watch.
A man attacked me in a parking garage, tried to stab me with an 8-inch knife, but I carry a pistol. I fight back. That's why I'm still here. Every woman has a right to defend herself with a gun if she chooses. Hillary Clinton disagrees with that. Don't let politicians take away your right to own a gun. Donald Trump supports my right to own a gun. Defend your rights. Vote Donald Trump for president.
The NRA Institute for Legislative Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Folks, it's not easy to tell a painful personal story like that, much less on national television. And to do it in the heat of a brutal and violent election takes a special kind of courage. But that's Christy. She was ready to do everything she could to make sure other women never have to experience the hell that she went through. Christy endured hateful, vicious attacks on social media just for speaking her mind. They tried to bully and intimidate her into silence, but she stood strong. She weathered the storm, and she didn't back down, not 1 inch. Christy is a life member of the NRA, and she'll never be alone because she's got 5 million of us watching her back. She's with us today. Christy, please stand and let us all thank you.
Live pictures from the Georgia World Congress Center as we await President Donald Trump, who touched down in Atlanta not too long ago on Air Force One and is motorcading into downtown Atlanta right now before he addresses the NRA. This is Chris Cox, who's delivering some welcome remarks before Wayne LaPierre, the president of the NRA, takes the stage. Then we're going to hear from Lee Greenwood, his famous song, Proud to be an American, and then the president will take the stage shortly thereafter. Joining me now on the telephone is Mark Bauerlein, a professor at Emory University, an executive editor of First Things magazine, a Trump supporter. Mark, a president hasn't addressed the NRA since Ronald Reagan back in the early 1980s. What brings President Trump to Atlanta to address the NRA this time around?
Probably what motivates politicians to do this kind of thing always. These are strong supporters. These are people who are going to back the president very powerfully throughout a lot of the ups and downs of politics in Washington, and they're going to do it because of this single issue support. President Trump, I remember a couple of speeches during the campaign where he talked about the fact that he owns a gun. Sometimes he carries it, sometimes he doesn't. He's not going to tell people whether he does or not, but the NRA loved it. And gun owners loved it, especially in contrast to Hillary's and President Obama's strong support for the restrictions on gun control.
And that's been one of the president's objectives in office is to keep that base of support close. You know, in the nomination of Neil Gorsuch for the Supreme Court, folks are getting a little restless about the wall, but keeping supporters like the people here at the NRA convention and the Second Amendment folks close to him and reaffirming that kind of support.
Well, this is the man who wrote The Art of the Deal, and during the campaign, he promised his supporters a deal. I stand for this. I will do this. You support me. And they did come out and support him, and now it's time for Donald Trump to close the deal, to live up to his side. And that's I think, what he's doing. And I think it's a very clear political calculation. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, this is what we elect politicians to do, to fulfill what they say they're going to do. And as we move into the future, I don't think it's quite as critical at this point that Donald Trump get it done with his supporters as it is he still fighting to get it done? And we acknowledge that there is resistance in Congress, in Washington, D.C., in the deep state. But if they feel like he is sincerely pushing, at least for now, I believe that support is secure.
If you're just joining us on Facebook Live, we're being joined by Mark Bauerlein, a professor at Emory University, executive editor of First Things magazine. It's interesting, Mark, how a president of the United States hasn't addressed the NRA since the early 1980s. I mean, is doing so, is that a controversial thing for a Republican president to do?
It has been since, I think, the 1980s, and that's probably because the culture, as dominated by a more liberal-oriented media from the New York Times through CNN, has become stronger on gun control and issued more stories about the necessity of gun control. And politicians pay attention to this. I mean, the Republican Party does care about what the New York Times says on its editorial page. The Republican politicians do care what the news stories say about them to the folks back home. Donald Trump broke that pattern. He is one who said, no, I don't care what the media says. In fact, I'm going to go after the media. And what he saw was that was a political winner. If other Republican politicians are paying attention, they might make the same calculation, and we may see a little more open fraternization going on with groups like the NRA.
Mark Bauerlein is joining us, and watching along with us is Wayne LaPierre, the head of the NRA, takes the stage. He is only one speaker in advance of President Trump, who's en route as we speak over to the Georgia World Congress Center. We're going to hear Lee Greenwood sing in just a moment. Mark, no mistake also that this is kind of one-stop shopping for the president, as he not only addresses the NRA, but he gets behind Karen Handel, who's running for the congressional seat once occupied by his Health and Human Services Secretary. He's going to attend a private fundraiser for Karen Handel after his speech today. So, two events kind of bundled in one here, but Karen Handel is going to need his support, especially given how close Jon Ossoff came to winning the seat outright.
And I think it's a gamble on President Trump's part, because in coming out and supporting Karen Handel so openly, he is making that election something of a test. of his continued political strength. If he comes out and pushes Karen Handel and she does end up losing, a lot of other Republicans in Congress are going to look at that and say, I think President Trump's support is not quite as strong as I thought it was. I don't need to get on his agenda maybe so quickly as I thought I did before. If she does win, that really only strengthens his hand, especially when you look at the degree to which Democrat liberal money has poured into that district and pushed the candidacy. They've made it a test of Donald Trump, and what I've seen, the media, the Washington Post and New York Times and others are very eager to see the possibility of a loss in Georgia being pinned on Donald Trump's popularity.
Talking with Mark Bauerlein, a professor at Emory University, executive editor of First Things magazine. Is that a fair marker? There was a congressional race, I believe, in Missouri, and one here. Is that a fair barometer to gauge the support of the president through these relatively small congressional races in these sporadic districts? Or, I mean, we know the media is going to run with them, but or are looking at the midterms a better barometer?
Well, Tom, this is politics, so we have to put fair in quotation marks. And I would say it's fair if enough people think it's fair. I mean, if enough people believe that this is a fair marker, well, then it will be a fair marker. If enough people judge it that way, then that's the way it's going to be. I mean, politics is often not so much a matter of the concrete facts on the ground as what most people think are the facts on the ground, and that often steers votes, which is what the bottom line here. That steers votes as much as realities steer votes.
We're waiting for Lee Greenwood, and as soon as he takes the stage, we're going to bring you that song, which has lasted through so many decades, became so popular during speaking of Ronald Reagan, the Reagan administration. So many people in that room just love Lee Greenwood and hearing him sing, and so as soon as he takes the stage, we're going to take that. Mark, thank you so much for joining us on Facebook Live. We appreciate your perspective and your insight.
Glad to talk.
So Wayne LaPierre is on the stage, and we're going to take him live and drop in and listen to the conference, because really in just a couple of minutes now, after Lee Greenwood, President Trump will take the stage, and we're going to stream that live.
We're going to wrap this event right now. And
right here
back on, live
on Facebook Live. So we're going to wrap for now, and as soon as all those events happen, we're going to be right back here with you. So stay with us.
Just so you understand what we're doing. So
Yeah.
the audience dwindled down to about 600.
Okay.
So what we want to do is stop this stream.
Okay.
Start a new stream when
Fresh.
the president is introduced. Everybody will get a new push.
Got it. Good idea. Was he all right, Mike? He was okay having him on, right?
Ready?
I want to see your tax returns.
That video was great.
You really think I'm stupid enough to put my bribes on my taxes? Mr. Mayor, you have all
That video was great.
What?
fat-free,
Pivot to see
omega-3, totally
I haven't seen it.
Oh, so basically Dale's trying to get him to answer a question, and because he reads only responses, oh, we think you get paid for your story, so we want to see. It's great.
Thanks a million, man. He was good. Right, guys? Mark?
Yeah, it was good.
My guest?
Game context. Is the audio still on this? Because we're streaming on YouTube still for the article. So.
this country, good, decent, honest Americans are seeing right through all the lies of the elites. Amen. You got it. For the last quarter of a century, in poll after poll, whether it's Gallup or NBC or the Wall Street Journal, Americans have said they view the NRA more favorably than both chambers of Congress or either national political party. And, yeah. And heck, I like baseball, but NRA is even more popular than Major League Baseball. It's true. Check the polls. The majority of Americans admire and they trust the NRA because we always say out loud what we believe. We speak the truth, even when it may be hard, and we fight like hell to defend it. Our success, our victories, our growth, our strength have always been grounded in truth. Confronted with the three most dangerous voices in America, the NRA has consistently beaten them back. We've kicked hundreds of politicians out of office and sent them into obscurity by speaking truthfully to citizens all over this country, by educating and teaching the value of our Second Amendment to an ever-growing body of Americans who are reaching out for their rights to defend their lives, their homes, and their families and their communities. And by giving the media the big, fat, black eye it so often richly deserves. Please watch. Watch
They
this.
use their media to assassinate real news. They use their schools to teach children that their president is another Hitler. They use their movie stars and singers and comedy shows and award shows to repeat their narrative over and over again. And then they use their ex-president to endorse the resistance, all to make them march, make them protest, make them scream racism and sexism and xenophobia and homophobia, to smash windows, burn cars, shut down interstates and airports, bully and terrorize the law-abiding, until the only option left is for the police to do their jobs and stop the madness. And when that happens, they'll use it as an excuse for their outrage. The only way we stop this, the only way we save our country and our freedom, is to fight this violence of lies with the clenched fist of truth. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safe place.
Yeah. To defend our Second Amendment freedom, NRA has deployed its First Amendment freedom through innovative state-of-the-art news and content platforms, and to deliver the truth directly to all freedom-loving Americans. We're all over the country, and you can see it now on NRATV.com, including the latest on NRA Carry Guard. You know, back in 1987, it was NRA that launched the National Concealed Carry Movement. We started it. We fought for it in states all over this country. The NRA is the reason today that 15 million Americans legally carry a firearm for personal protection. That's why we've introduced Carry Guard, the most comprehensive level of personal protection, training, education, and insurance for every law-abiding citizen who carries a firearm. It's the most elite, essential, and effective training available. And a Carry Guard card should be in the wallet or purse of every American citizen. Only with the strong voices and new innovative 21st century programs echoing together all over this country can the dangerous voices be overcome. And the National Rifle Association of America is the strongest voice of freedom on the planet. Sometimes the elites of the radical left, they suck so much air out of the atmosphere that there's nothing left to breathe but their poison. And that's what leads to all the angst and anxiety and hatred that's dividing this country. It's only our loud and clear and life-changing messages of American values and liberty that can rescue our youth. Only strong voices of truth and good can save this country. The election of our president, that's proof of that. The NRA stood with Donald Trump through the darkest days of his campaign. We never wavered. We never flinched. We never lost focus of the true priorities of that election. The Supreme Court, a return and respect for law and order in the country, a strong national defense, and an absolute determination to restore the full measure of Second Amendment freedom for all honest, law-abiding Americans. Our victory in that fight has made possible the fights we continue to face, and face them we will. I know that you, all of you, are up for the challenge, and I know gun owners all over this country are eager to again stand and fight for their freedom and fight for their president. We love our country. We cherish our freedom. We believe in America as the greatest nation on earth, and we are all forever proud to be an American. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome another proud American, the great Lee Greenwood.
Taking you back now to the Georgia World Congress Center, where Wayne
Thank you,
LaPierre,
Wayne.
the president of the NRA, has introduced Lee Greenwood.
Hello, Patriots.
Let's listen in as he
Hello, Americans.
sings to the crowd there in advance of
If
President Donald
tomorrow all
Trump,
the
who
things were
is
gone,
close to taking the
worked
stage to
for all
address
my
folks
life,
there at the Georgia World Congress Center.
and
Lee
I had to
Greenwood.
start again with just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. Sing it! God bless the From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining seas, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the NRA. I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up
Lee Greenwood, everybody. Let's give him another round of applause. Anyone here proud to be an American? Who's proud to be an NRA member? Who's proud of what we accomplished in November? You know, the media won't admit it, but President Trump's had a hell of a first 100 days. For starters, he saved the Second Amendment and individual freedom by putting Neil Gorsuch on the U.S. Supreme Court. He restored the rule of law when he put Jeff Sessions in as Attorney General. Our enemies now fear us again because he put General Mad Dog Mattis in charge of our military. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we now have a commander-in-chief who isn't afraid to bomb the ever-loving hell out of ISIS. Now, I have a message for the New York Times, CNN, and MSNBC. Look, I get it. I know you don't want to be here. You thought you'd be covering President Hillary Clinton this year. Well, sorry about that, you're not. So get over it and join the men and women of the National Rifle Association in welcoming the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Thank you, Chris, for that kind introduction and for your tremendous work on behalf of our Second Amendment. Thank you very much. I want to also thank Wayne LaPierre for his unflinching leadership in the fight for freedom. Wayne, thank you very much. Great. I'd also like to congratulate Karen Handel on her incredible fight in Georgia 6. The election takes place on June 20th. And by the way, on primaries, let's not have 11 Republicans running for the same position again. It's too nerve-shattering. She's totally for the NRA, and she's totally for the Second Amendment, so get out and vote. You know, she's running against someone who's going to raise your taxes to the sky, destroy your health care, and he's for open borders, lots of crime, and he's not even able to vote in the district that he's running in. Other than that, I think he's doing a fantastic job, right? So get out and vote for Karen. Also, my friend, he's become a friend because there's nobody that does it like Lee Greenwood. Wow. Lee's anthem is the perfect description of the renewed spirit sweeping across our country. And it really is indeed sweeping across our country. So, Lee, I know I speak for everyone in this arena when I say we are all very proud, indeed, to be an American. Thank you very much, Lee. No one was more proud to be American than the beloved patriot, and you know who I'm talking about. We remember on gatherings like today, your former 5-term president, the late Charlton Heston. How good was Charlton? And I remember Charlton, he was out there fighting when maybe a lot of people didn't want to be fighting. He was out there for a long time. He was a great guy. And it's truly wonderful to be back in Atlanta and back with my friends at the NRA. You're my friends, believe me. Perhaps some of you remember the last time we were all together. Remember that? We had a big crowd then, too, so we knew something was happening. But it was in the middle of a historic political year and in the middle of a truly historic election. What fun that was, November 8th. Wasn't that a great evening? Do you remember that evening? Remember that? Remember they were saying, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has won the state of Michigan. They go, Michigan, how did that? Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin. Whoa. But earlier in the evening, remember, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, all the way up. We ran up the East Coast. And you know, the Republicans have a tremendous disadvantage in the Electoral College. You know that. And tremendous disadvantage. And to run the whole East Coast, and then you go with Iowa and Ohio and all of the different states. It was a great evening, one that a lot of people will never forget. A lot of people. Not going to forget that evening. And remember they said, there is no path to 270. For months I was hearing that. You know, they're trying to suppress the vote. So they keep saying it. So people say, you know, I really like Trump. He loves the Second Amendment. He loves the NRA. I love him, but let's go to the movie because he can't win. Because they're trying to suppress the vote. But they'd say, I mean, hundreds of times I heard, there is no vote, you know, there's no route. They'd say, there is no route to 270. And we ended up with 306. So they were right. Not 270, 306. That was some evening. Big sports fans said that was the single most exciting event they've ever seen. That includes Super Bowls and World Series and boxing matches. That was an exciting evening for all of us, and it meant a lot. Only one candidate in the general election came to speak to you, and that candidate is now the President of the United States standing before you again. I have a feeling that in the next election, you're going to be swamped with candidates, but you're not going to be wasting your time. You'll have plenty of those Democrats coming over, and you're going to say, no, sir, no, thank you. No, ma'am, perhaps, ma'am. It may be Pocahontas. Remember that. And she is not big for the NRA, that I can tell you. But you came through for me, and I am going to come through for you. I was proud to receive the NRA's earliest endorsement in the history of the organization. And today I am also proud to be the first sitting president to address the NRA Leadership Forum since our wonderful Ronald Reagan in 1983. And I want to thank each and every one of you, not only for your help electing true friends of the Second Amendment, but for everything you do to defend our flag and our freedom. With your activism, you help safeguard the freedoms of our soldiers who have bled and died for us on the battlefields. And I know we have many veterans in the audience today, and we want to give them a big, big, beautiful round of applause. And like I promised, we are doing a really top job already. 99 days, but already with the Veterans Administration, people are seeing a big difference. We are working really hard at the VA, and you're going to see it, and you're already seeing it, and it's my honor. I've been telling you we're going to do it, and we're doing it. Thank you. The NRA protects in our capitals and legislative houses the freedoms that our service members have won for us on those incredible battlefields. And it's been a tough fight against those who would go so far as to ban private gun ownership entirely. But I am here to deliver you good news. And I can tell you that Wayne and Chris have been fighting with me long and hard to make sure that we were with you today, not somebody else with an empty podium, because believe me, the podium would have been empty. They fought long and hard, and I think you folks cannot thank them enough. They were with us all the way, right from the beginning. But we have news that you've been waiting for a long time. The 8-year assault on your Second Amendment freedoms has come to a crashing end. You have a true friend and champion in the White House. No longer will federal agencies be coming after law-abiding gun owners. No longer will the government be trying to undermine your rights and your freedoms as Americans. Instead, we will work with you by your side. We will work with the NRA to promote responsible gun ownership, to protect our wonderful hunters and their access to the very beautiful outdoors. You met my son. I can tell you, both sons, they love the outdoors. Frankly, I think they love the outdoors more than they love, by a long shot, Fifth Avenue, but that's okay. And we want to assure you of the sacred right of self-defense for all of our citizens. When I spoke to this forum last year, our nation was still mourning the loss of a giant, a great defender of the Constitution, Justice Antonin Scalia. I promised that if elected, I would nominate a justice who would be faithful and loyal to the Constitution. I even went one step further and publicly presented a list of 20 judges from which I would make my selection. And that's exactly what we did. And by the way, I want to thank really Heritage, and I want to thank also all of the people that worked with us. Where's Leo? Is Leo around here? Where is he? He's got to be here. Where is he? He has been so good. But and also from Heritage, Jim DeMint, it's been amazing. I mean, those people have been fantastic. They've been real friends. The Federalist people, where are they? Are they around here someplace? They really helped us out. I kept my promise, and now, with your help, our brand new justice, and he is really something very special, Neil Gorsuch, sits on the bench of the United States Supreme Court. For the first time in the modern political era, we have confirmed a new justice in the first 100 days. The last time that happened was 136 years ago in 1881. Now, we won't get any credit for this, but don't worry about it. The credit is in the audience, right? The credit is in the audience. All of those people. They won't give us credit, but it's been a long time, and we're very honored. We've also taken action to stand up for America's sportsmen. On their very last full day in office, the previous administration issued an 11th hour rule to restrict the use of lead ammunition on certain federal lands. Have you heard about that, folks? I'm shocked to hear that. You've all heard about that. You've heard about that. On his first day as Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke eliminated the previous administration's ammunition ban. He's going to be great. Ryan's going to be great. We have also moved very quickly to restore something gun owners care about very, very much. It's called the rule of law. We have made clear that our administration will always stand with the incredible men and women of law enforcement. In fact, countless members of law enforcement are also members of the NRA because our police know that responsible gun ownership saves lives and that the right of self-defense is essential to public safety. Do we all agree with that? Our police and sheriffs also know that when you ban guns, only the criminals will be armed. For too long, Washington has gone after law-abiding gun owners while making life easier for criminals, drug dealers, traffickers, and gang members. MS-13, you know about MS-13? It's not pleasant for them anymore, folks. It's not pleasant for them anymore. That's a bad group. Not pleasant for MS-13. Get them the hell out of here, right? Get them out. We are protecting the freedoms of law-abiding Americans, and we are going after the criminal gangs and cartels that prey on our innocent citizens, and we are really going after them. As members of the NRA know well, some of the most important decisions a president can make are appointments. And I've appointed people who believe in law, order, and justice. That is why I have selected as your Attorney General, number one, a really fine person, a really good man, a man who has spent his entire career fighting crime, supporting the police, and defending the Second Amendment. For the first time in a long time, you have a pro-Second Amendment, tough on crime Attorney General, and his name is Jeff Sessions. And Attorney General Sessions is putting our priorities into action. He's going after the drug dealers who are peddling their poison all over our streets and destroying our youth. He's going after the gang members who threaten our children. And he's fully enforcing our immigration laws in all 50 states. And you know what? It's about time. Heading up the effort to secure America's borders is a great military general, a man of action, Homeland Security Director John Kelly. Secretary Kelly, who used to be General Kelly, is following through on my pledge to protect the borders, remove criminal aliens, and stop the drugs from pouring into our country. We've already seen, listen to this, no, it's never happened before. People can't even believe it. And by the way, we will build the wall no matter how low this number gets or how high this gets. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. You know, they're trying to use this number against us because we've done so unbelievably at the borders already. They're trying to use it against us. But you need that wall to stop the human trafficking, to stop the drugs, to stop the wrong people. You need the wall. But listen to this. We've already seen a 73% decrease, never happened before, in illegal immigration on the southern border since my election. 73%. You see what they're doing, right? So why do you need a wall? We need a wall. We'll build the wall. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. That's an easy one. We're going to build the wall. We need the wall. I said to General Kelly, how important is it? He said, very important. It's that final element. We need the wall. And it's a wall in certain areas. Obviously, where you have these massive physical structures you don't need, and we have certain big rivers and all. But we need a wall, and we're going to get that wall. And the world is getting the message. They know that our border is no longer open to illegal immigration, and that if they try to break in, you'll be caught and you'll be returned to your home. You're not staying any longer. And if you keep coming back illegally after deportation, you will be arrested, prosecuted, and you will be put behind bars. Otherwise, it'll never end. Let's also remember that immigration security is national security. We've seen the attacks from 9/11 to Boston to San Bernardino. Hundreds of individuals from other countries have been charged with terrorism-related offenses in the United States. We spend billions and billions of dollars on security all over the world, but then we allow radical Islamic terrorists to enter right through our front door. That's not going to happen anymore. It's time to get tough. It's time we finally got smart. And yes, it's also time to put America first. And perhaps I see all of those beautiful red and white hats. But we will never forget our favorite slogan of them all, Make America Great Again. Right? Keeping our communities safe and protecting our freedoms also requires the cooperation of our state leaders. We have some incredible pro-Second Amendment governors here at the NRA conference, including Governor Scott of Florida. Where's Governor Scott? Where's? Great guy, doing a great job. Governor Bryant of Mississippi, what a wonderful place. Governor Bryant is here. Thank you. Governor Deal of Georgia. And we're also joined by two people that, well, one I loved right from the beginning. The other one I really liked, didn't like, and now like a lot again. Does that make sense? Senator David Perdue, he was from the beginning. And Senator Ted Cruz, like, dislike, like. Where are they? Good guys. Good guys, smart cookies. Each of these leaders knows that public officials must serve under the Constitution, not above it. We all took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and that means defending the Second Amendment. So let me make a simple promise to every one of the freedom-loving Americans in the audience today. As your president, I will never, ever infringe on the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Never, ever. Freedom is not a gift from government. Freedom is a gift from God. It was this conviction that stirred the heart of a great American patriot. On that day, April 242 years ago, it was the day that Paul Revere spread his Lexington alarm, the famous warning that the British are coming, the British are coming, right? You've all heard that, right? The British are coming. Now we have other people trying to come, but believe me, they're not going to be successful. That I can tell you. Nothing changes, right, folks? Nothing changes. They are not going to be successful. There'll be serious hurt on them, not on us. Next came the shot, heard round the world, and then a ragtag army of God-fearing farmers, frontiersmen, shopkeepers, merchants that stood up to the most powerful army at that time on earth, the most powerful army on earth. But we sometimes forget what inspired those everyday farmers and workers in that great war for independence. Many years after the war, a young man asked Captain Levi Preston, aged 91, why he fought alongside his neighbors at Concord. Was it the Stamp Act? Was it the tea tax? Was it a work of philosophy? No, the old veteran replied. Then why, he was asked. Young man, the captain said, what we meant in going for those redcoats was this. We always had governed ourselves, and we always meant to govern ourselves. Captain Preston's words are a reminder of what this organization and my administration are all about. The right of a sovereign people to govern their own affairs and govern them properly. We don't want any longer to be ruled by the bureaucrats in Washington or in any other country for that matter. In America, we are ruled by our citizens. We are ruled by each and every one of you, but we can't be complacent. These are dangerous times. These are horrible times for certain obvious reasons, but we're going to make them great times again. Every day, we are up against those who would take away our freedoms, restrict our liberties, and even those who want to abolish the Second Amendment. We must be vigilant, and I know you are all up to the task. Since the first generation of Americans stood strong at Concord, each generation to follow has answered the call to defend freedom in their time. That is why we are here today, to defend freedom for our children, to defend the liberty of all Americans, and to defend the right of a free and sovereign people to keep and bear arms. I greatly appreciated your support on November 8th in what will hopefully be one of the most important and positive elections for the United States of all time. And to the NRA, I can proudly say, I will never, ever let you down. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our Constitution. And God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
President Donald Trump at the Georgia World Congress Center addressing the NRA tomorrow, marking 100 days since the president took office, partly marking the occasion by coming to Atlanta to speak to the NRA, the first by a sitting president since Ronald Reagan, representing a major victory for the organization and a symbol of its pull with this new administration. Standing firmly behind candidate Trump in his race against then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. You came through for me, so I am going to come through for you, President Trump saying to the enthusiastic crowd there. Also mentioning congressional candidate Karen Handel, who was at the airport to greet President Trump when he touched down here in Atlanta.
Ladies and gentlemen,
encouraging supporters there in the crowd gathered for the NRA convention to turn out on June 20th in the 6th Congressional District, and in future elections encouraged 11 candidates, please, not to run for the same office, referencing the crowded field of GOP candidates vying for that seat and the close proximity with which Jon Ossoff came to winning the congressional seat outright. We stream this event not only on our Fox 5 Atlanta Facebook page and our YouTube channel, but we are on air on our broadcast channel, Fox 5 Atlanta, with the speech, as we have done with prior presidents, like President Barack Obama when he visited back in 2016 to address a conference of disabled veterans. We also carried that speech on our air, which was, like this one, also a policy speech, not a campaign speech. So we felt compelled to bring you President Trump's remarks to the NRA. Off to a fundraising event the president goes for Karen Handel. This is a closed event and will not be available to reporters. Of course, a small pool of reporters will follow the motorcade to that private fundraising event for Handel to raise money for that June 20th election. The president always likes to recap election night, in which the polls and many of the broadcast outlets, the commentators said that the president didn't have a chance to win the election, and ticked off state by state, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, all states that President Trump carried that night, winning a historic election over Hillary Clinton.
And most of all, we have to give them the assets and the resources
reminding
to
supporters of many of his accomplishments, which will be in focus as we mark the president's 100 days in office. A lot of special coverage this weekend, tomorrow officially marking that occasion. The president talking about his nominating Neil Gorsuch to replace the late Antonin Scalia, which got raucous applause there in the hall at the Georgia World Congress Center, and reaffirmed his commitment to build the wall and to enforce immigration laws, which got an even louder round of applause from supporters there. The wall has been in focus lately with the budget that the president just presented to Congress. And funding for that wall not being part of that bill that the president put up, to the disappointment of many of his supporters. But several times throughout the speech, the president reaffirming his commitment to do so, and that was acknowledged by the crowd there. So a historic day for us here in Atlanta and in Georgia, with the first visit by Donald Trump as President of the United States, and for the NRA, the first time a president has spoken to the group since Ronald Reagan addressed them back in the early 1980s. We appreciate you joining us on Facebook Live for our special coverage and on our Fox 5 Atlanta YouTube channel. We're going to dip out from the convention hall here on Facebook for a moment. They are in a bit of a quiet period between when the president speaks and when other political luminaries like Senator Ted Cruz and Governor Rick Scott of Florida and the Secretary of the Interior and others, United States Senator David Perdue, all set to take the stage, which we will bring to you live. If you're not able to be in front of a TV to watch our air on Fox 5 Atlanta, you know, you're always welcome to log on and join us on Facebook, where you can also engage in conversation with folks who are watching along with you. So thank you so much for joining us. Our coverage continues tonight on Fox 5 News at 5 and at 6, and of course tonight at 10 and on News Edge at 11. Meantime, I'm Tom Haynes, live in the Fox 5 newsroom, saying good afternoon and thanks again for joining us.
Carry passage in 1987, which was the beginning of our, absolutely, it was the beginning of our reform movement that swept the nation and continues to define much of what we fight for. But without key officials fighting with us along the way, it wouldn't have been possible. Our next speaker has fought the anti-gun crowd and stood with law-abiding gun owners to expand our rights. Every step of the way, he's been there when we needed him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a champion of the Second Amendment, Florida Governor Rick Scott.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Chris for that great introduction. I want to start off by recognizing another Floridian. Attorney General Pam Bondi is here, and she's a great Second Amendment supporter. Thank you, Pam, for being here. It was great to follow my good friend, Donald Trump. He is going to do a great job believing in the Second Amendment. He just picked a great Supreme Court Justice, Neil Gorsuch. He's going to be a strong supporter of our military and our veterans. And he's going to cut our taxes. It's great to be here to talk with people that believe in freedom and liberty. But I do have to admit, I'm a little mad at the NRA right now. Yeah, it's true. And I can tell you why. Last year, I chaired a super PAC, and we spent $20 million to elect Donald Trump and beat Hillary Clinton. I thought it would be the largest effort in the country that year, but of course not. The NRA beat me. The NRA did more than anyone else. I want to congratulate all of you, Chris and Wayne and the entire team at the NRA. And most importantly, the members who made it possible for voters across the nation to stand up for freedom and liberty. As a result, we have a new Supreme Court justice who actually believes in the Bill of Rights. What a novel idea. But let's be real for a minute. Well, it's great that we have a 5-4 majority on the Supreme Court who believes in the Second Amendment. It's also a little crazy if you think about it. Is it too much to ask that every Supreme Court justice believe in the Second Amendment, the Bill of Rights, and the U.S. Constitution? Shouldn't it be 9-0 in the defense of freedom and liberty? Shouldn't it be a prerequisite to believe in the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution? I believe that it's crucial that we increase the Republican majority in the U.S. Senate. It's nice that we have 52 U.S. senators, but the truth is that means that any future Supreme Court justices will have to be acceptable to the two least conservative members of the Senate. I won't name any names, but that makes me uncomfortable. We need a larger majority in the U.S. Senate. We need a majority that has the intellectual capacity to comprehend these 3 words in the Constitution: shall not infringe. what does shall not infringe on the people's right to bear arms means? It means shall not infringe. That is not really very complicated. It's like that old country song that says, what part of no don't you understand? President Trump nominated a justice with sterling credentials, but the Democrats still filibustered and tried to stop him anyway. And they will do it again. Look at the votes on this Supreme Court nominee, and you can see that there are a number of senators who did not represent their states. These senators need to be retired. Unfortunately, one of my Florida senators, Bill Nelson, has veered far to the left. He voted for Sonia Sotomayor and Lenny Kagan, and he just voted against Neil Gorsuch. I'll leave you with this. You all have done great and important work, but there is no rest for the weary. There is no time to relax. The opponents of freedom and liberty are constantly on the move. But fortunately for America, today, the defenders of freedom and liberty are stronger. But we have to keep fighting to keep it that way. I want to thank you for your time. Please come and visit the great state of Florida early and often. Our economy is booming. We love tourists, new residents, and the Second Amendment. If you want to move to a sunny climate with no state income tax, come see me afterwards. Thank you, and God bless every one of you. Have a great day.
Over the past few years, we've gotten to know our next guest very well. He is a true warrior for liberty, a man who never stops fighting. He will take on any challenge to protect our constitutional freedoms, whether it's in the courts or on the floor of the United States Senate. They say everything's bigger in Texas, so please welcome a man whose defense of the Constitution is larger than life, Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
God bless the NRA. It's 2017, and Hillary Clinton is not the President of the United States. And Neil Gorsuch is a Supreme Court justice. Elections matter. This election, in November of 2016, this election mattered, and I'm here today to say thank you. The men and women here and across the country won this election in 2016. This election, in many ways, was a referendum on the Supreme Court of the United States. More so than any election we have seen in our lifetimes. Just over a year ago, Justice Scalia passed away. Justice Scalia was a lion of the law, a principled conservative giant, and his vacancy made this election, in a very real way, turn on what direction the American people wanted the Supreme Court to go. We all remember the debates between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. You may recall in particular one debate in which Hillary Clinton talked about the Heller decision, the most important decision Justice Scalia ever authored. And Hillary Clinton, you may recall, talked about Heller was really all about protecting toddlers. Well, I'll confess I know something about Heller because I represented Texas and 30 other states in Heller defending the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. And you know, it's striking. You can read the Heller majority opinion, you can read the dissent, and you can search in vain. Do you know what word is found nowhere in Heller? Toddler. Heller had absolutely nothing to do with toddlers. Instead, Heller concerned an individual, Dick Anthony Heller, a federal police officer who wanted to exercise his constitutional right to keep and bear arms in his home. And under the laws of the District of Columbia, it was a criminal offense. D.C. made it a crime for anyone to possess a handgun, and D.C. also made it a crime for anyone to possess an operable long gun, a rifle or a shotgun. Indeed, the laws in D.C. were so nutty that if you had, say, a shotgun in the closet with a trigger lock on it, and a criminal was breaking into your house, was crawling through the window to injure your children, and you took that shotgun and removed the trigger lock, you would have committed a crime in the District of Columbia. That's what Heller was about. It was about whether or not the Second Amendment means what it says. Hillary Clinton in this last election promised she would appoint justices who would overturn Heller. And it's worth pausing to reflect what that would mean. The position of the dissenters in Heller was not that some reasonable restrictions are sometimes permissible. The position of the dissenters in Heller was far more radical than that. 4 justices on the Supreme Court said the Second Amendment does not protect any individual right to keep and bear arms whatsoever. Their position was it is only a, quote, collective right of the militia, which is fancy lawyer talk for a non-existent right. Had the dissenters prevailed, the result would have been the Second Amendment would effectively have been erased from the Bill of Rights. It would have meant that any state, any locality, or the federal government could pass a law making it a crime for you or me or anybody else to exercise our Second Amendment right to own even a single firearm, and we would not have had any judicial avenue to challenge that. This election turned on that question, and millions of Americans came out precisely to protect the Bill of Rights. When Justice Scalia's vacancy occurred, Mitch McConnell and Chuck Grassley and Republicans in the Senate quite rightly said, we are going to hold this seat vacant and let the American people decide. That was the right thing to do. It was the principled thing to do. It made this election a referendum on the Supreme Court. The NRA, as an institution, played a critical role in mobilizing millions of Americans to protect the Constitution. Conservative leaders across this country spoke out. People like my friend Jim DeMint, a strong, principled conservative leader who's been fighting for our rights a long, long time. And when the election results came in, we heard a piercing wail of agony as mainstream media reporters shrieked in horror because the American people had risen up and defied Washington, defied the mainstream media, defied the pundits, and had said, we will defend our Constitution and we will defend our freedom. To underscore what was at stake, one needs look no further than a recent decision from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals used to be the most conservative court of appeals in the country, used to be a bastion of constitutional principle. But after 8 years of Barack Obama, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals has become a left-wing sinkhole. The Fourth Circuit just recently upheld Maryland's ban on so-called assault weapons and Maryland's ban on large-capacity magazines. And the test that the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals put out for the Second Amendment is they said the Second Amendment does not protect any weapons that might be useful in a military context. Now listen, that is not just legal interpretation. That is not just a reasonable position. There's a technical word for what that is. That is nuts. When the Second Amendment was drafted, it wasn't about hunting. Hunting is a lot of fun. In Texas, I enjoy hunting. Hunting is great. Target shooting is great fun. Second Amendment is not about target shooting either. The Second Amendment, the reason it is in the Bill of Rights is the Second Amendment reflects the fundamental right of each and every one of us to defend our homes and our families and our children from anyone that would seek to do them harm. And the Second Amendment was also designed as a check on government tyranny. That an armed citizenry is a free and independent citizenry empowered to defend our fundamental liberties. You know, you think back to the time of the founding. A musket was pretty darn militarily useful. It's what everyone carried into combat, was a musket. Anyone know the first gun control laws in the United States? First Congress passed a law mandating that every able-bodied man must own a musket. That's gun control founding father style. Now, the reason they wanted you to have a musket was precisely because it is useful in a military context to defend yourself, to defend your family against those seeking to do you harm. The Second Amendment, under the Fourth Circuit's test, it only protects things that would be useless in a military context. Apparently, the Second Amendment is all about protecting your right to own a feather duster. That's just one example of how the courts and judicial activism are undermining our basic rights. This election, let me say, when President Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, President Trump honored his promise and commitment to the American people. Although that vacancy was at best defensive. It's essentially a status quo vacancy. Justice Scalia, we ain't getting better than Justice Scalia. I believe very soon we're going to see another vacancy. I think the odds are significant that we'll see another vacancy either this summer or next summer. And let me tell you, when that vacancy happens, that is the potential to change the balance of power on the court. Now, I fully expect that the Democrats are going to go to war to stop the next Supreme Court nominee. Fortunately, we know the Democrats won't use anything that's useful in a military context. So maybe they will go to war with their feather dusters. But this next vacancy, I hope and pray that President Trump continues to honor his promise to nominate principled constitutionalists who will ferociously defend the Bill of Rights. And when that happens, it will be incumbent on all of us, each and every one of us, to inform, to educate, to mobilize the American people that the only way we defend our liberties is if we stand up and fight to protect the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. This election was a momentous election. The stakes could not have been higher. And I am here today to say to everyone here, congratulations and thank you for your passion pulling this country back from the brink and protecting our freedoms for our children and our children's children. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, Senator. Our next speaker is not an average supporter of our rights. As a Navy SEAL, he risked life and limb to secure freedom for all Americans. In Congress, he advanced that freedom representing the great state of Montana. And now, he's following the model of Teddy Roosevelt and expanding our freedom even further as the 52nd Secretary of the Interior. We finally have a true sportsman and conservationist serving in that key post. On his first day in office, after riding a horse to work, which was more than Obama did in 8 years, he repealed Obama administration's ban on lead ammo on federal land. I was honored to be with him that day, and I'm even more honored that he's here with us. Welcome NRA life member, sportsman, and a true American patriot, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke and his wife Lola.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here. And, you know, I'm glad to have my wife next to me because owning a gun, hunting, and fishing is a family sport. So I am deeply proud. I got to tell you up front, the president is a magnificent boss. He is. He calls me once a week, what do you need? And I can tell you, there is no president in my lifetime that is more for us than President Donald J. Trump. And despite what the media says, take my word, history will show there was no president that has done more in as short a time as Donald J. Trump than getting jobs back and restoring our country. Hey, I grew up in Montana. I'm fifth generation, and some say I grew up with a rod in one hand and a rifle in another, and a horse underneath. But I can tell you, no one loves our public lands more than I. You can love them as much, but you can't love them anymore. I tell you, it's a great responsibility to be a steward of our most majestic holdings. The Department of Interior is 12 time zones. We run from the Virgin Islands in the east all the way to American Samoa in the west. 1/5 of our nation's land falls under the Department of Interior. And my goal is to make sure that hunting, fishing, traditional use is on all of it. Now, I'll admit there are areas where Murr is right, where man is more an observer and the lightest footprint. But much of our holdings are in the Pinchot model, where multiple use is the best management tool. And multiple use is for us. Our public land belongs to America. One of my first secretarial orders was to repeal a ban on lead ammunition and fishing rods, or fishing tackle. And the reason is this. When you grow up in the woods, as I did, and my dad took me out, as many of your folks took you out, hunting and fishing and hiking, canoeing, and using our public lands is a tradition. It's a legacy that's important to make sure that legacy is extended in perpetuity for nations or for our citizens and generations to come. It is a family tradition. And what I get concerned about is when it's narrowed to be elite, when restrictions are placed on our access, when roads are closed. Then what occurs is it becomes an elitist sport, where us, the American people that own the land, don't have access to our land. And you can take it from me, it won't happen under President Donald J. Trump's watch. The other part about my job, as I would say, my top priority is restoring trust. Out west, believe it or not, the Department of Interior in some places is not well liked. And that bothers me too. Because we want to be the happy department. We do. We want to be the respected department that works with local communities. When you see a BLM truck out there, what I want people to see are land managers and not law enforcement. And you know what? I'm not a big advocate for Smokey Bear being armed either. But this is about what trust is. The responsibility to be the steward of our great lands is a great responsibility. But as secretary, I want to make sure that we work with local communities. We want to be the YEP team, the advocate for hunting, fishing, and traditional use, rather than the adversary. And it's important. I can tell you the NRA stands as a core, fundamental group that supports that legacy. Your standing made a difference, all of you. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. We all knew where our country was heading, and we didn't quit. In the SEALs, I spent 23 years, and there's a saying in the SEALs, is you have to... Now, up front, I was never the best jumper, diver, explosive expert, but I always knew who was. I always surrounded myself with really, really good people, and I married up. Way up. But I can tell you, there's a saying in the SEALs, those who wear the trident, is you have to earn your trident every day. And I will say this. We have to earn our freedom every day. So with that, we got to go catch the plane. But thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for being there when we needed it. Thank you for everything that you will do. Because I know with this group, guns and freedom matter. God bless you, and God bless the NRA.
Getting a little bit away from politics for a second, let me ask you a question. Were any of you disgusted when San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick refused to support our flag? Well, the good news is there are still athletes out there who put their love of family, faith, and country above everything else. Today, I have the honor of presenting NRA's Courage Under Fire Award to one of them. Please watch.
Those who know Adam LaRoche say he's a very principled man, devout Christian, gun rights supporter, big-time family guy.
LaRoche, right field! There's going to be some noisy Minute Maid Park.
That's a grand slam for Adam LaRoche.
Trying to drop a hook on Utley. LaRoche to Kroll. Well done on both ends.
How many other jobs do you get to take your son to the field? You know, I remember growing up, getting to do it with my dad.
The first time I remember coming here, I was just kind of nervous.
Really an awesome situation because there's not very many areas in the workplace where you can bring your son out to your everyday job. So I try not to take that for granted.
Chicago White Sox first baseman Adam LaRoche surprised his team.
White Sox star Adam LaRoche walking away from the team and millions of dollars after management requested that he bring his son around less.
This guy was set to make over $1 million a month in average salary this season, but he says it's not worth it if he can't be with his son.
54 yards.
Sure. Can I test you? How many?
54. Or 24.
The 36-year-old has played 12 seasons for 7 different teams, and his son has been with him practically all the time.
He's been teaching me some things.
According to Fox Sports, LaRoche decided to retire because White Sox team president Ken Williams told him his son was no longer welcomed in the clubhouse.
When I'm working, I don't want somebody else's kid in there all the time.
But I really respect the fact that LaRoche said, you know what, actually, I want to focus on my family.
To me, it's stupid, it's petty, and it's absolutely positively ridiculous.
Bryce Harper tweeted this in support. Good for you, Roach. Nothing like father and son in the clubhouse. It's a family game. Hashtag family first.
I support him. I support Adam LaRoche. I do as well.
I will guess that in a couple of days, he will be back in the fold with the Chicago White Sox.
I haven't lost an ounce of sleep. I mean, I have zero regrets.
This is as close as we can get. Did you see him?
Yes, sir.
Get him in there. Hey, don't shoot yet. Don't shoot. Let him get broadside.
Oh! That big sucker. The deer you've been wanting.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my friend and fellow NRA member, Adam LaRoche, and his son, Drake.
Thank you, guys. Man, what a cool video. I remember that hunt in the ground blind like it was yesterday. That was a pretty special moment. I hadn't seen that in a while. Guys, it's an honor to be up here, and I mean that. I can't think of a better audience that I would rather be speaking to than you guys. And I'm thinking about earlier when Wayne was talking about how baseball was less popular than the NRA. That made me really proud to be a part of both. I love both of them, but that, for some reason, sat really well with me. You know, it's an honor, again, to be a part of this. I feel very undeserving to be up here, especially with the lineup of speakers that they've had. But it is nice. From here on out, I'm going to be able to tell my kids and all my friends that President Trump opened up for me instead of the other way around. So I like the order that this went in. You know, I know I know a lot of people out there, and maybe a lot of you are thinking, man, what kind of idiot walks away from that kind of money? And I don't blame you. To be honest, I'm just a baseball player. I've never been accused of being real smart, but I can tell you one thing I've learned, one of the many things I've learned over my career is that it's never enough. You know, whether it's money, our possessions, our status, power, like at what point is it enough? And I don't know anybody that's ever reached a monetary goal and been totally satisfied with that. And I happen to be reading a book right now called The Measure of a Man. And there's a quote in there from a Robert Horton. And he says one of the greatest lessons he's learned in life is that if your heart and soul are devoted on money and searching for money, you're going to be equally disappointed whether you get it or whether you don't. And I don't know if I've ever heard a more true statement. And if you don't know who Robert Horton is, you need to go Google it, because I don't either, but he seems like a really smart guy. Maybe I should know who he is. I have no idea. You know, there's a few reasons, and I'm going to try to keep this brief. There's a few reasons why I decided to step away. Obviously, you guys just saw the main reason was my son, which, by the way, I've also got a daughter, an 8th grader. Drake's a freshman this year. You know, one of the other reasons, and this is kind of from left field, and I don't know if you guys have heard anything about it, but I got involved in the sex trafficking fight. The counter sex trafficking fight a couple years ago. And really, long story short, I could sit and talk about this for a long time, but the gist of it is it really messed me up. When I got to peek into that world of how disgusting that is, and to see how another human being can treat other humans that way, was mind-blowing. And long story short, I got to go overseas and do a couple trips in some different countries. And when I came back, my partner and I, Blaine Boyer, I don't know if you guys remember Blaine. Blaine and I came up together in the Atlanta Braves organization. And Blaine's been my partner. We got some Braves fans out there. Yeah, that's been a few years ago. What was that? Oh, thank you, buddy. Blaine and I got into this sex trafficking fight a couple years ago, and we came back from these trips and just kind of made it our mission to fly around the U.S. and meet with as many organizations as we could. We got to meet with IJM out of D.C. The first group we went out with was the Exodus Road, a group called Deliver Fund, Operation Underground Road. Just some awesome organizations that that over the last couple of years we've got to work pretty closely with. And man, I didn't realize, and I don't know if you guys do either, the amount of this that goes on in our country. Like right here in our backyard is mind-blowing, especially where we're at right now in Atlanta. It's just a hub for this trafficking. I live 100 miles south of Kansas City. I had no idea that Kansas City had so much volume of sex trafficking coming through there. So anyway, I don't say all this to say everybody needs to get involved in the trafficking fight, or to make it sound like there's not any other major issues out there, because there is. This is just something I feel like God has called me into. Have been absolutely blessed to be a part of it. And if nothing else, just to bring awareness to you guys that it does go on right here. It's very difficult to see. I love that lately we're hearing more of President Trump and that office talk about it and kind of confirm that it is an issue. I believe it's the fastest growing criminal activity ahead of the drug and weapons trade or something like that. I mean, this is skyrocketing. And then on to the main reason why I left, which you guys saw, was because I was no longer allowed to spend time or as much time with my son. And I'm not going to sit up here and defend my son's behavior or integrity or anything like that. You know, this is a much bigger issue than just me or us in here. really bigger than all of us. And I would assume we have a ton of fathers in here. And I've got to speak on this since my retirement. What our role as fathers is. Like, to me, this is a countrywide epidemic of kids growing up in fatherless homes. Right? How many dads we got? I'm assuming we got a lot of dads in here, right? I see, as a dad, I see my window closing rapidly of my chance to impact my kids, right? I've got a freshman and an 8th grader. I mean, it's gone by like that. And aside from the trafficking, that was another probably bigger reason why I decided to step away. Was it wasn't worth it to me. It wasn't worth missing, another year without my son by my side and even having my daughter there. And decided to move on, but where else are our kids going to learn what it looks like to be men and women with integrity and morals and values? I guarantee you, I can guarantee you they're not getting it in their schools. They're not getting it in society, because society screams that a man is someone who never backs down, who defies authority, who's more concerned about what he looks like, than what he believes in. And it's on us right now as fathers to impact our kids, and not just our kids, but any kids we're around. I prided myself for a long time to say that baseball is what I did. It's not who I was. And I'll still stick with that. I believe I was put here to do a lot more than just play baseball. I think Chris and Wayne were put here to do a lot more than just run and lead the NRA. I think Mr. Trump was put here to do a lot more than just be our president and lead our country. I believe this is the platform that God has given us to love others, to love Him, and ultimately spread the gospel. So if you ever wonder where a good place to start and kind of start looking into this, especially the responsibilities of a father, I would say start in the New Testament and look at the life of Jesus and how He treated others and how He lived His life. I think that would be an awesome place to start. Thank you guys very much for the time. It's an absolute pleasure. Anything to say? It was good.
All right, Adam and Drake, please stand here for one more minute. Now, Drake, your dad's already a patron member, so we wanted to present you with your own life membership. And Adam, I know you've already got a bunch of plaques on the wall, and you've got a gold glove and a silver slugger. So I decided to get you something other than a plaque this time. And we're presenting Drake and Adam with Daniel Defense ARs with Silencer Co. suppressors. Those ARs are just to make the media get upset. It's not often that we get to honor those who put their life on the line every day to protect us, but it's my privilege to be able to do so now. On the evening of September 17th, 2016, Officer Jason Faulkner of Avon, Minnesota Police Department was off duty, shopping in plain clothes at a local mall. Suddenly, he heard two loud, sharp noises and saw people running and screaming. A man dressed in a security uniform confronted him and asked if he was a Muslim. "No, I'm not," Officer Falconer told him. That's when he noticed the man was holding 2 large knives. Without hesitation or regard for his personal safety, Officer Falconer drew his concealed handgun, announced he was a police officer, and ordered the man to drop his knives. But he didn't drop them. Instead, he turned and ran into a crowded store. When Falconer followed, the man abruptly laid down, still clutching the knives. And a moment later, he rushed Officer Falconer again. The officer fired several shots, took control of the situation, and stopped the threat. It was only then that he learned the suspect had been in the middle of a stabbing spree when he encountered him. 10 shoppers had been stabbed, and many more punched in the head, back, neck, and face. Officer Falconer's heroic actions saved countless lives. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Officer Falconer for his heroic actions and in welcoming here to receive the Law Enforcement Officer of the Year Award. Officer Falconer, please stand and be recognized. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker has experience in going toe-to-toe against Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg spent $20 million to pass an anti-gun referendum by just a few thousand votes. During that fight, our next speaker never flinched. He continued to work, and as of today, that anti-gun joke is still not the land of the law. Nevada's law-abiding gun owners have him to thank for protecting our rights. Please join me in welcoming a great champion of the Second Amendment, Nevada Attorney General Adam Laxalt.
All right, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I want to start with President Reagan's remark in the 1983 NRA convention. He said, "Those who seek to inflict harm are not fazed by gun control laws." That central theme has been used by the NRA and Second Amendment advocates for decades since. That has special meaning for me because Wayne LaPierre told me a few days ago that it was my grandfather, Senator Paul Laxalt, who personally asked President Reagan if he would come and be with the NRA and address them. And as you know, President Reagan's the last president to address the NRA until today, when President Trump came here and decided to walk with us, and we thank him for that. Isn't it nice to have a president that stands for the Second Amendment and is willing to come here and address the NRA and tell us that he's going to be with us for the next 8 years? Now, some people say that the NRA fights too hard, should let certain things go. But I would like to say that I commend the NRA for understanding the slippery slope. They understand that you have to fight for every single inch. And if you don't, what happens? It slides and slides, as we've seen in many other areas about what we care about in this country. I'd like to use Nevada as an example. 5 years ago, whether you're Republican or Democrat, if you're a statewide elected official, you supported the Second Amendment. We were profoundly a pro-gun state. Just last year, as Chris just mentioned, Mayor Bloomberg came into the state to try to pass universal background checks, something 5 years ago we would have thought was unthinkable. Well, after tens of millions of dollars, with myself, the top law enforcement officer, and every elected sheriff in Nevada saying that this would not make the people safer and that it was poorly written, it passed by a few thousand votes. Now, just a few days ago, our Democrat majority Senate passed a bill that you really can only see in science fiction. How many people remember The Minority Report with Tom Cruise? There was a concept called pre-crime. So this bill starts with saying by the possession and ownership of a gun makes you high risk, if you can believe that. It goes on to say the government can take your Second Amendment right based merely on suspicion or a threat. That is where our state is headed. We expect our governor will veto that bill, as bad as it is, but it's terrifying to think that Nevada is only a veto away now from this kind of terrible gun law being passed in our state. Now, we must adhere to constitutional principles and understand why our Second Amendment exists. A government that denies its citizens the right to bear arms is a certain kind of government. It's a kind of government that does not trust its citizens. Our founders wrote the Bill of Rights precisely to protect us from that kind of government. They understood that our rights don't come from the government. We had our rights before we came together and decided to create this great constitutional republic we live in. Now, right there at the beginning of the Bill of Rights, alongside of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, is our Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. And our founding fathers understood that was a founding fundamental principle that we needed to enshrine in our Bill of Rights. So why do we fight for issues that some say are not important and others say are extreme? Because ultimately, all of us in this room understand that we are always fighting for something even bigger, something more fundamental than the latest gun control proposal. We are fighting for the nature of our republic. Are we a nation in which the citizens grant power to the government, or are we a nation in which the government dictates rights to its citizens? The founding fathers were quite clear on this point. They trusted you more than they trusted the government. And I happen to share that view. Now, I can tell you attorneys general all across this country have been fighting for our rights, fighting for the Second Amendment over the last few years. Many called the attorney generals the last line of defense against the Obama administration. And we all followed the last few years as things kept coming outside of the Constitution, breaking our constitutional system, and the attorneys general were there to try to protect all of your rights and all of your liberties. But we couldn't do it alone. We needed a president. And why do we need a president? Because we needed to get our courts back. And the courts are crucial in this fight for our Second Amendment and our rights. We're so fortunate that the president delivered on his campaign promise to nominate a justice in the mold of the late, great Antonin Scalia. And thankfully, we now have Justice Neil Gorsuch. But we can't stop there. And we're excited to see President Trump continue to deliver on that promise to nominate Scalia-like judges across this country, the district court level and the circuit court level, and God willing, at the Supreme Court level. Now I want to close with another line from President Reagan in his 1983 speech. He said, "I've always felt a special bond with the members of the NRA. You live by Lincoln's words. Important principles may and must be inflexible." Well, I second that motion, and I commend the NRA for fighting for every square inch. Thank you. God bless America.
Anybody having a good time in Georgia? As I travel across the country, I meet a lot of politicians who claim they support the Second Amendment. They like to say they're with us until we actually need them. But our next speaker stands strong when it counts. He's succeeded throughout his professional career, whether it was as the CEO of Dollar General or the CEO of Reebok, or now as the U.S. Senator from Georgia. When it comes to protecting our rights, this man continues to succeed. Friends, and especially you Georgians, please help me give a great warm welcome to a great supporter of the Second Amendment, Senator David Perdue.
Okay, thank you. What a great day in Georgia. Man, I'm so excited to be here. I want to thank you to the NRA. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you. You guys single-handedly may have saved our republic last year. God bless you for that. It is so humbling to be here before you today. Being in the United States Senate is new to me. I spent my career in the real world where you live. It's a different world in Washington. It's humbling. I was talking to my wife the other night. It reminded me how humbling it is. I said, babe, did you ever think in your wildest dream that I'd be in the United States Senate? She said, honey, I hate to tell you this, you were never in my wildest dream. Folks, I wanted to come today because my mission in life is to call this crisis. We have another shot at it, but we are still in the middle of it. I believe this is the most dangerous crisis in the history of our republic. I think it has three dimensions. The first dimension is we have a global security crisis. The world may be more difficult and more dangerous than any time in my lifetime. The second dimension is we have a debt crisis. My wife says I can bring any cocktail party to its knees talking about this, but it's what I do. We have got to solve this. What I want to talk today about, though, may be more serious than either of those, because I believe this one is republic threatening. Today we have a constitutional crisis. I don't use those words lightly. And not only that, they're not just my words. Jonathan Turley, a Democrat law professor from George Washington University, has stated that former President Obama has created the greatest constitutional crisis in our history. By blocking Congress, he has used executive orders and regulatory mandates to change the direction of our country. He figured out how to run the country without Congress. He created the fourth arm of government, the regulators. And it'll take decades before we can undo all of that damage. He created a dangerous precedent for future presidents to run the government and run our country without the three branches of government being in balance. In last year's election, thanks to the help of the NRA, Americans voted to change the direction of our country. I think we have one more shot at this. Isn't it refreshing that we now have a president that will stand up for our Second Amendment rights? Isn't it refreshing that we have a president that will stand up and enforce laws? Isn't it refreshing that we have a president that will stand up to those around the world who would do us harm? You may remember that there were only 2 senators standing firm for Donald J. Trump last year in the early days. But when I got discouraged, I looked around, and there you were, the NRA. Thank you for that. I believe that you had as big an impact on that national election last year as any other group in America. And I don't say that lightly. I spent a lot of time in the field, and I ran into you everywhere. I saw your ads. I saw your people. I saw your enthusiasm, and it carried the day. I am so proud to be a member of the NRA when I see an organization like this make that kind of difference for our country. Thank you for that. President Trump shares our outrage with the dysfunction in Washington. He understands that prior disregard for our Constitution will no longer be permitted. When President Trump was sworn in, he laid out his priorities for our country, and job one was to get our economy going again. It's very simple. He's laid out 4 priorities, just like a businessman would. I'm privileged to be in some meetings with this president, And it's so refreshing to see a man looking to get results, not just talk about it. This year, tomorrow actually is the last day of his first 100 days. And I will tell you, it's been a whopping success. I was asked the other day, give him a grade. I said, well, you know, it's absolutely an A+. If I could give him anything higher, I would. I see this man moving in so many directions. He's moving at a business pace, not a bureaucratic pace. He's moving to pull back the regulations that have sucked the very life out of this economy over the last 8 years. He is fighting hard to bring justice back to our country. He nominated Neil Gorsuch, and I'm so proud to be a member of the Senate that just a few weeks ago we stood up to the first ever partisan filibuster attempt to block a nominee from the United States Supreme Court, and we confirmed Neil Gorsuch to the United States Supreme Court. President Trump called on Congress to fix this debacle called Obamacare, and we're well on the way to do just that. And lastly, he is going to, one way or the other, clean up this archaic tax system that we have in the United States. And you know what? People like you and me are listening. Consumer confidence is at a 20-year high. CEO confidence has not been higher in 13 years. Manufacturers have not been this enthusiastic about investing capital to grow jobs in 20 years. In addition, this president is enforcing federal law. He will stop the insanity called sanctuary cities, y'all. This is a president that will remove felons who are in this country illegally. This is a president that doesn't veto things that will reverse onerous rules that violate our rights as Americans. I actually put a bill in recently that actually scrapped an Obama-era rule that was put in last year that threatened due process and Second Amendment rights. And you know what? He's already signed that sucker into law. President Trump is delivering results, but there's so much more to be done. You know that. He's just gotten started. 100 days is an arbitrary number on a calendar. He knows what he wants to do. We know what needs to be done. The problem is we have to get through the archaic system in Washington. We need to restore the balance between the three branches of government. We need to support law enforcement officers and give them our full, undivided support. We need to fund our men and women in the military and stop this nonsense of not building an army and a navy and an air force. Do you know we have the smallest army since World War II, the smallest navy since World War I, and the oldest and smallest air force ever? Thank you, Barack Obama. We will fix this. I'm not going to say a lot about the wall. You had a better guy talk about that earlier. We call him the president. But he will build that wall. He will stop sanctuary cities. He is moving to protect the Second Amendment rights. And we have to go further. We have to pass a concealed carry reciprocity law. I thought I might get a little rise out of you with that one. We need to fill 127 federal and circuit judge openings that we have right now across this country. This president has told us that that's also job one. And finally, folks, after 230 years, it's finally time to bring term limits to the United States Congress. Let's be clear, though. This is bigger than me. It's bigger than you. It's really bigger than Donald Trump. That's hard to do. This is about the freedom of our children and our children's children. And you know it. That's why you do this. Ronald Reagan reminded us, he warned us actually, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We don't pass it down in the bloodstream. We have to fight for it, protect it, and pass it on so they can do the same thing. Or one day, in our sunset years, we'll be sitting around telling our children what it was once like in America when women and men were free. Not on my watch, not on your watch, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for hanging in there with that. We have a real moment of opportunity. What we did in November last year is the first step. But now the real heavy lifting starts. We absolutely have to get back to our founding principles. And ladies and gentlemen, electing Donald Trump is going to be easy compared to what I'm about to tell you. We have gotten so far away from these things, and I mean it. This is why I ran. I saw this as a business guy. I saw it as a father. I saw it as a husband. I saw it as a private citizen. But we have to get back to our founding principles. It's just this simple. Economic opportunity for everyone. Fiscal responsibility. Limited government. And finally, individual liberty. We have something in the United States that no other country in the history of the world has. It's called a Constitution. We use that word lightly. Many of us carry it around in our pockets. George Washington, in a very early time, 1795, reminded us that the Constitution is my guide, which I will never abandon. I can't think of better words for a senator in the United States Senate in 2017 facing the problems that we have today. I did not run for the United States Senate to simply let bureaucrats trample on that Constitution. I didn't simply run for the Senate to be part of a broken system. I didn't run to accept the status quo. You're not here to accept the status quo. Folks, we simply have to work together to protect our rights under that Constitution, to seize this moment of opportunity, and finally change the direction of our country. Thank you for saving us from the brink of disaster last year. Thank you for electing Donald J. Trump. And thank you for all you do to protect our Second Amendment rights and all of our rights under that Constitution. God bless you. God bless the NRA. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Friends, we only have a few more speakers, but you're not going to want to miss any of them. To introduce the next one, she's a very special young lady. Please turn your attention to the screen.
I've been told that black women aren't supposed to support the Second Amendment. I've been told I shouldn't want to be able to protect myself. I shouldn't teach my fellow students about their rights. And I shouldn't speak my mind. Thank God I didn't listen. To all of those who have called me a sellout, an Uncle Tom, or a pawn for someone else, here's what should scare you. I never changed my beliefs. I woke up and realized that you don't represent them. You don't speak for me, and you don't think for me. I am not the victim you need me to be. And I'm talking to more women like me every single day. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big welcome to a courageous, strong, freedom-loving woman, Miss Antonia Okafor.
Thank you, Georgia. I am so happy to be with you today. It's kind of a homecoming for me because I used to live right here in Atlanta. In fact, I attended Emory University. Yeah. I appreciate your response to that NRA ad Chris ran to introduce me. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I bring a different voice and face to the NRA and to defending our freedom. And I'm proud to call the National Rifle Association one of the greatest civil rights organizations in the history of the world. think about it, the NRA is like America, or at least it's like America is supposed to be. No matter the color of your skin, no matter where you come from, no matter your economic status or your education level, whether you're black or white, or young or old, or a man or a woman, if you're a law-abiding citizen of this country, you have a constitutional right to your Second Amendment and a God-given freedom to protect yourself and your family, period. The NRA fights for your right and mine, and I'm proud to fight with them. But I have to admit that my journey to the fight has been long and evolving. You see, I voted for Barack Obama twice. Now, don't boo yet. I now know I was wrong. Sometimes we have to learn through our mistakes. Obama was my mistake, my disappointment. He did nothing for my country, nothing for my community, and nothing for my future. But you know who has? People like Maj Touré, founder of Black Guns Matter, who is going to every major inner city in America and teaching those who need it most about gun safety and their Second Amendment rights. Or firearms instructor Marshall Tigner of Atlanta, who is well on her way to the goal of teaching 2,500 Black women how to shoot by the end of the year. A Black woman and a veteran herself. These are two proud NRA members and are people impacting real change in my community. Let me tell you, after Obama's failure, there was no way I was going to make the same mistake again and vote for Hillary. I walked into that voting booth. I proudly cast my ballot for Donald J. Trump, and I'm proud to call him my president. Now, I don't get those people who say Trump is not their president. They have a right to their First Amendment, but they don't have a right to use their freedom to deny my freedom. They don't have a right to call me Uncle Tom, or worse names I'll never repeat. When I moved to graduate school at the University of Texas at Dallas, I became an activist in the fight to allow students with legal permits to carry firearms on campus. For me, the issue was simple. Law-abiding students should have the same rights on campus as they do off campus. Of course, not everyone saw that purity of that logic. Guess who opposed our Texas bill the most? You guessed it. The professors and administrators. The liberal leftist educators of our young people. Wait until you hear their argument against us. And I'm quoting them directly. African Americans are disproportionately affected by the saturation of our society by firearms. We demand that firearms be banned in all spaces occupied by Black people on our campus. Same reaction I had. They actually tried to use a racial argument. What a disgrace. I told them I wasn't worried about the racial ideology of someone who has been trained, tested, and background checked to obtain a license to carry. No, my worry was all about the racial ideology of violent criminals and lunatic professors and policymakers who would render me defenseless. They even tried to tell me that I had no right to shoot a rapist. That if I carried a gun, I'd more likely hurt myself with it. That I'd be overpowered by a man. They don't get it. I'm not overpowered. I am empowered. And that's why I started a pro-campus carry student organization for college women with the same name, Empowered. The anti-gun left talks about feminism, but fails to acknowledge that real feminism is about female empowerment. And what better way to empower myself than to take my safety into my own hands? That's the real gift of our Second Amendment freedom. Personal empowerment for my own survival, my own life. We finally got that bill passed last year in Texas. And students in that state, especially women, can walk across campus and feel safer whether they're carrying a gun or not. The right to carry helps protect everyone, the armed and unarmed alike.
got a good guy. They got Jared Allen, right? Good pick. Good. I think I'm going to remain not being a Chargers fan anymore. Mike Williams didn't really do it. So. Yeah. He did.
literally looks like that. Your video.
You know, I think he ended up where he needed to go. He's gonna be up there. Dude, they got a great defense.
Case. They created a new right, a right to be married. And they declared, which is something they are not supposed to do, is make law, but interpret law, that same-sex marriage will be the law of the land of the United States of America. So why is it that I, as a former lieutenant colonel, former member of Congress, a law-abiding citizen with a concealed carry license, cannot carry my weapon in every single state in the United States of America? Who are these people to tell us that they can make certain rights, certain laws, but yet the most important right, the most important law, and doesn't the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, apply to us? Obviously it doesn't. That's what we must stand up for. Bernie Sanders says that every kid has a right to a free college education. You just had Antonia Okafor talk about, then what about the right to be able to protect yourself when you get the free college education? That is the hypocrisy of the left, which must be taken care of. And Governor Nathan Deal, if you're listening to me, sign that campus carry law here in Georgia. It is amazing to me that we have cities in the United States of America that are saying that criminal and illegal immigrants have a right to stay in the United States of America, but yet we as Americans do not have a right to protect ourselves against these criminal and illegal aliens. As long as we have gangs, such as MS-13, that are walking our streets, confronting Americans, killing Americans, as long as we continue to have Islamic jihadism here on our shores in the United States of America, and my last duty assignment was Fort Hood, Texas. And it is an affront, it is appalling that our government still classifies what Nidal Hasan did there as workplace violence. It is appalling that the shootings of innocent Americans by Islamic jihadists in San Bernardino and Orlando, the left classified it as gun violence. And what we need to do is have more gun control. This is what we need to do, make sure that Americans can protect themselves. When I go into inner city communities, such as mine here in the old 4th Ward, and I see Americans, they have to be afraid of going out in the streets because criminal gangs are running the streets. You saw that commercial about the elderly black woman, the senior black woman who marched with Martin Luther King Jr. at Selma. She lives in a housing area up in Wilmington, Delaware. And the fact that she came to the National Rifle Association because she was afraid and terrified. And they told her that if she went out to get a gun, they would evict her from that housing authority. That's not how we're supposed to be in America. We're not supposed to have Americans afraid to live in their own homes. And that is who the left is. The left has always stood up against the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. We can go back through history and understand that even when slaves were made free, it was the Democrat Party that still created a terrorist organization by the name of the Ku Klux Klan to keep them down, to keep them disarmed, to keep them from enjoying all the freedoms. And what do we still have today? The same Democrat Party is out there trying to disarm Americans, especially in our inner city communities where people now are living in their homes enslaved. Never forget, it was an elderly black gentleman that brought the case against the city of Chicago because all he wanted to do was have a shotgun in his home so that he would feel safe. Thank God that I had two great parents, a World War II veteran and my mother, both buried up at Marietta National Cemetery. I'll never forget when my dad showed me a shotgun and my mom showed me that 38 Special. But of course, being a good Southern mom, she told me this 38 Special could be meant for you because I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. Y'all know what I'm talking about, them Southern mamas. We dodged an incredible bullet in the 2016 election. But do not think this is over. You still have Michael Bloomberg out there. You still have all of these anti-gun factions that are out there. And we need you to be part of this great organization, the oldest civil rights organization that this country has ever known, the organization that stands up to make sure that your First Amendment rights are protected, the organization that looked to an inner city kid here and allows him to be on this incredible stage. See, things like that only happen in America. And if we don't protect these great freedoms that we have, then someday our children and grandchildren will look and say, why did you let me down? I don't think that that's what you want to have happen. Go out and enjoy a great 146th NRA annual meeting and convention. But I want you to be committed. I want you to be committed and know, just the same as I know, as a son of Atlanta, as a native Georgian, as a proud Southerner, as a Christian, as a conservative, as a husband, and as a father, I am the NRA. And I am freedom's safest place. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. One of the most important nominations by President Trump was to name freedom fighter Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. That's right, but the country's gain was the Senate's loss. Now, fortunately, the man who took his place is a champion to gun owners across the country. For the past 6 years, he served as the Attorney General of Alabama. In that role, he became a national leader in protecting our rights in the courts. And now he continues to be a giant, literally, in the fight to protect your rights in the U.S. Senate. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Alabama Senator Luther Strange.
Thank you so much, Chris. To adjust this microphone a little bit, I'm the newest senator, taking the place of my dear friend Jeff Sessions, but I am the tallest senator in the history of the United States at 6 feet 9 inches tall. And sometimes these microphones don't exactly fit me, but I am so glad to be here. I want to thank you all for taking the stand that you're taking and allowing me to be here as you defend the Second Amendment. I want to thank, again, Chris. He's been a dear friend of mine for many years. He works tirelessly across the country, not just in Washington, but in the state capitals across this country. And I can't thank him enough for his friendship. It's no secret, I hope, to you that Alabamians like Jeff Sessions and me and others believe in and uphold the Second Amendment. We have a proud tradition in our